All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the Everything College Football Podcast. Today we'll be breaking down Week 1 in college football. There's still a game to take place Monday night between Clemson and Georgia Tech, but I don't expect anything too crazy to happen there. So we'll go ahead and recap this wild opening weekend here. There's going to be timestamps below. If you'd like to skip around, I'll highlight some of the top games on the weekend, and I'll kind of do a final recap of the entire schedule. The big game of the weekend, though, was Ohio State, Notre Dame. Pretty interesting game. Pretty odd, 21-10 final score here. Jackson Smith-Njigba went down early with an injury on that first drive. Tried to come back in. He was just unhealthy, was not able to get to go. The Ohio State offense really struggled, only 7 points. They had a touchdown drive early in that first quarter, and you're like, here it comes. Here comes the brigade of this offense. And that's not what happened at all. They, found pay dirt in the third and fourth quarter. Overall, though, the Ohio State offense, he was pretty stagnant. C.J. Stroud made good decisions, did what he could. But this offense, they just did not have the same chemistry with Smith-Njigba out on the sideline. I don't want that to be an excuse, though, because I think this Notre Dame defense certainly earned a lot of respect. They kept a lot of things in front of them playing that cover two. They actually gave up a touchdown to Xavier Johnson whenever they decided to drop the safeties and bring a blitz. And Stroud, he read that perfectly. Found the end zone. So overall, though, I think this team certainly earned their respect. They were leading at the halftime. They covered the spread like I picked them to do. Thought we'd see a lot more points, though. Tyler Buchner was pretty good in this first half. I think he was completed his first 8 or 9 passes. 10 of 18, 177 yards. They did not have the ball a lot, especially in that second half where they got shut out. Big thing we were looking forward to is seeing, what this Ohio State defense could do under Jim Knowles, because they were just incredibly soft last year, and this is a big test. I felt like Notre Dame, if Ohio State was still soft like last year, then they could have some success running the ball with Chris Tyree's speed on the edge and those linebackers against the tight ends of Notre Dame. Those guys like Michael Mayer, they're pretty impactful. Mayer, 5 grabs, 32 yards. He had a pretty respectable game, I would say, but this offense overall pretty shut down. This 4-2-5 was much improved here in Week 1. I don't want to overreact because there's still a lot to see. They play Wisconsin here in a couple weeks, so we'll kind of see really from a physicality standpoint where they're at. But I'd say they did a pretty good job here against this Notre Dame offense because that's their bread and butter, is to run the ball, be physical in the trenches. Well, they didn't give anything up to Buckner's a heck of a runner. Tyree's speed was not unleashed. Early in the first half, though, they had some, respectable runs, only 2.5 yards per carry for the game. And, the stat sheet's not good, but they were staying ahead of the sticks on those 2 scoring drives they had. They were able to march down the field pretty quietly. But overall, I'd say this is an elite effort from a defense that was just terrible last year. Tommy Eichenberg, one of those guys who really stepped up. He was a big struggle player for them last season. 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 9 total tackles. Eichenberg really stepped up there at linebacker. They're going to need more from those guys this fall if they want to continue to compete for championships. Michael Hall, he really introduced himself to the college football world. Complete freak there on the interior. Really kind of had his way with this group. I'd say the corners, they were pretty solid. I believe it was Cam Hart that was getting tested a lot early on. But overall, these guys were holding up pretty well. Of course, this wasn't the healthiest group. Smith-Njigba was hurt, and I believe another one of their starters was a little banged up as well. I think it might have been Julian Fleming, Marvin Harrison, Amika Mugba, though. They stepped up. They made some plays. Xavier Johnson, of course. One thing I really like to see out of this offense, though, was the commitment to the running game. 15 carries, 91 yards for Henderson, 14-81 in a score for Mayan Williams. That's pretty good work. 29 carries between the 2 backs. That's one thing. That's one of the only negatives I had in the offseason about the Ohio State offense is they're not very committed to running the football as much as they should. Kind of keep that defense on the sideline more because they can do it. They put up 555 yards or something per game last year. They're more than welcome to run the ball and do it effectively. It's just of course they're so good through the air. I want to see. They only had, I think it was 2 games last year. It was 2 games of 40-plus carries as a team. They had 35 in this one, so we're still getting, pretty close to that mark I like to see. So that's good stuff. I like to see them control the ball and the clock a little bit more this season. That's what they did in a game like this where, things were not flawless through the air. Spacing was hard to come by, I thought, for this receiving core because they did not, the splits were a lot different compared to last year where they were just having guys run all over the place with 1 or 2 defenders that were just nowhere near them because they were spaced out so much. And of course, mix that with the skill and the route running, and they were just wide open on the corner in between the middle of the field. You didn't see that in this game. I give credit to the Notre Dame secondary, and I thought the pass was pretty respectable. Early on they had a sack, and I thought they made some good plays on the interior. This defensive line is one of the nation's deepest. Overall, pretty respectable game all around. Ohio State, obviously, it kind of disappointed because you wanted to see them put up 40, 50 points. But Notre Dame, A very tough schedule this year. I have them as a top 6 team come the end of the season. I think this is a good start. They certainly earned the respect. I don't see anyone bashing Notre Dame after this game. So really because of that defensive effort. But the offense, they're going to have to progress. It's a really young unit. They're pretty banged up at pass catcher. Avery Davis, torn ACL. And obviously you're looking here outside of Mayer, the other people who caught a pass, 1 reception each. And they were big plays, but only 10 total grabs, and 5 of them came from 5 different guys. So we'll see what happens as the year progresses. I thought this was a pretty interesting game. Kind of disappointing from what this game was hyped up to be. But I think Notre Dame certainly earned the respect. So we'll see what happens moving forward. Looking at Oregon and Georgia, not much here. 49-3, complete beatdown. Just Georgia, they were completely overpowering the Ducks. This team was not good at all in terms of matching up with them. I thought they could compete for a little bit, so I was pretty hesitant on my score. I picked UGA 35-17. I did think that this offense would have quite good success, but I'm pretty sure they scored on every single drive they had. You can look at the score chart here. 85, 92 yards. They were moving down the field methodically. Stetson Bennett playing with a lot of swagger, 571 total in terms of yards for this team. A flawless effort. We'll see what Bennett continues to do as they enter conference play here in a couple of weeks. But this was just a great game from him. He had clean pockets all day. That was one of my concerns with Oregon is their pass rush. It was non-existent. They didn't have a pass rush one bit. I did like the game plan from Oregon, though. Kenny Dillingham on offense. It's not wise to attack this team on the interior, so they didn't try to one bit. They continuously attacked the boundaries with quick screens, fast-moving plays, trying to get Nix out of the pocket of his legs, and that was working. They just could not finish. Nix had a terrible interception, 2 of them in the first half. One was bad, another one was pretty solid man-to-man coverage, but, better play there by Malachi Starks to snag it away. And then they had an opportunity there late in the half, and we settled for 3 points. So, Georgia completely blew them out, 46-point win here. Great effort all around. The defense looked phenomenal. They didn't allow much. 140 rushing yards, 37 came from the quarterback. So, you don't ever see Georgia even give up numbers like that, even a blowout. So, I'm not concerned one bit. They stepped up. They were great. Jalen Carter's throwing people around. Guys like Malachi Starks there go 8 tackles. The DBs had a big game. Overall, I'm not really sure what to say other than Georgia was just great. Defending national champions kick off the season with a bang over a number 11 team who probably shouldn't have even been ranked that high to begin with. This team's probably going to end up winning 8 or 9 games and potentially winning their own conference. So that's going to be, I think, something to watch late in the year for Georgia. This is going to be a great resume builder potentially because of what Oregon can do in their own conference. Ugly game here for the Pac-12. Looking at another one, though, where I do think they earned some respect was Utah and Florida. Cam Rising, a terrible interception there in the end zone on the last drive. It's unfortunate to see that happen, but I think Utah, they earned a lot of respect because they showcased they could come to Gainesville and match up with this team from a physicality standpoint. 283 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, and the numbers don't look great, but I don't think they weren't as successful in that. Trevor Etienne, though, he had some great runs for them. Montrell Johnson had a few solid ones. Anthony Richardson, they really tore him up with his legs. That's what he can do for you. I ran him in fantasy that night, and he was splendid. 40 fantasy points, I believe, from him. So that was a great effort. 283 isn't really the full story, but they did rip off a handful of big runs, and that was something that monitor, really coming into this game was how would these two teams do in the trenches against each other. And even 230 for Utah is misleading because it was a hard-earned 115 yards for Tavion Thomas. They started to get things going a little bit more in the second half, which is what I expected in my preview. I thought they would grind them down to a victory, though that was not the case. Yards were hard to find, though, in the interior. The Florida defensive front led by Gervin Dexter. These guys were really tough, very physical. Another thing I said coming into this game is I thought the tight ends were going to have 150-plus yards, and they got close, 105 from Cooley. It's really not even a tight end, but he does do a lot of different things for them. So Kincaid, 29 as well. So I thought that the linebackers would have great success against these linebackers, and 100-plus yards for Cooley. He was just tough to guard all game long. Amari Burney's a guy singled out to have to make plays in this game against these tight ends, and he ended up coming down with a game-winning interception. The pass rush from Florida, not really existent. 0 sacks, despite having great success against the run. I thought they certainly brought the physicality to the table. Same for Utah. Their pass rush was not, as good as I thought it would be coming into this game. I thought they kind of really set the tone with some of those young guys. Both teams played really hard. This was a good game. You knew it was going to be close, and of course it came right down to the final seconds. Ricky Pearsall, the ASU transfer, led the team grabbed 67 yards. Looking at this play sheet here, the box score is still kind of trying to figure out who is going to be the guy that steps up at pass catcher this year for Florida. I got a quick glimpse of that. Shorter, only 2 grabs. Henderson, didn't really do much of his opportunities. So we'll see what happens with the Florida offense. This is a team that I picked to go 6-6. this season, but I also said they could easily go 9-3 or even 10-2 and potentially win the division. I was really that high on this team. I think that's certainly possible. Tough month, though. They get Tennessee and Kentucky here in September. Big win for them. This should move them into the top 25. Utah, nothing to hang your hat on. This is not a bad effort from Utah. They were down multiple times in this game in a road environment. Cam Rising did not crack one bit. Obviously made a bad decision to end the thing, but for the most part, he was great. Led them right downfield on that drive with limited time as well. With a rowdy crowd, loud, packed Ben Hill Griffin Stadium. Did not seem to face him one bit. It's tough for their playoff chances, though. It's going to be hard now. Usually, you can only lose one game, and then that's it. In this playoff era with the 4 teams, you're only afforded about one loss, and this is it for Utah. So they have a great opportunity to bounce back, though, in the Pac-12. Not a bad effort, though, from the Utes. Cincinnati, Arkansas, one big thing I said in this game was that Cincinnati was going to have a pretty big edge downfield with their wide receivers, Trey Tucker and Tyler Scott in terms of speed against the secondary. Man, 325 yards for Ben Bryant should have been a lot more. These guys were open, time after time. He couldn't put it on him, especially in the first half. He was really rattled. This SEC crowd really, had him shook. 0 points at all, overthrowing guys, making bad decisions, just not accurate at all with his throws. From a physicality standpoint, I expected Arkansas to win the battle in the trenches, running the ball. 224 yards, 5 yards per carry. I'd say they did that, because remember, I highlighted how they performed against Alabama, where they just absolutely got throttled on the ground. And, 224 yards, 5 per carry, that's, pretty solid. I think they kind of held their own for the most part, but KJ Jefferson through the air against a, inexperienced secondary, 223 yards, 3 touchdowns. Trey Knox had a big performance, 2 grabs from him from his tight end spot. Jaden Hazelwood had a big game. But here you go for Scott and Tucker. These guys had big games, and they probably could have both eclipsed a lot more. These guys were open repeatedly. Bryant could not put it on them. That was one of the big difference makers here. They weren't able to really run the ball one bit, which kind of expected here. I was interested to see how the pass rush for Arkansas looked, especially with their secondary not being something I'm high on. 3 sacks. I did like Landon Jackson's effort. Drew Sanders was impressive in his debut. And they also had a fumble from Jordan Dominic Forrest where, there's a strip sack, I'm pretty sure. So, overall, Arkansas, they looked pretty good. I expected them to win this game by 7, and that's what they did. So I guess I kind of got that right. This was a very interesting game I was very looking forward to. And I think most of the things I said it did end up happening in this ball game, which, was not tough to predict one bit. Cincinnati, it's obviously going to be hard to run the table now. I think they're still going to be in for a great season. They proved it coming in here, the Arkansas is in battling for 4 quarters, especially after a poor first half. If they performed just a little bit better in the first 2 frames, they probably would have won this ball game. But flawless, nice, balanced effort from the Arkansas offense. Look at that. They scored in all 4 quarters. And then, the secondary, they have a lot of improving to do, though. The stat sheet's not very, vindictive of how poor I thought they were in the back end. That's a big thing to watch. They play South Carolina here on this Saturday. Those are the top 4 games that I was looking at. Looking at some other games, Alabama 55-0 rout over Utah State, 11-win team from a year ago. Bryce Young didn't have a lot through the air, 200 yards, but he had 5 or 6 touchdowns, ran for 100. He had a big 60, 70-yard run, a chunk play there. Trayshawn Holden stepped up, Jermaine Burton. They're spreading it out a good bit. Texas A&M, kind of a struggle for them. It was kind of a one-score game for most of that first half, 31-0 there. Haynes King had 364. They could not run the ball, though. I'm going to pull up the rushing total. Devon A. Chain really struggled in that first half, only 42 yards on 18 carries as a whole. That's not good. And Ice Smith, of course, he stepped up, 146 and 2 touchdowns. Haynes King, another 2 picks. Remember, last year he had 3 picks in, the season opener. So we'll see if they made the right decision. I think Max Johnson was the better fit. Long term, we'll see how that goes. You see here, you go 32 carries, 110 yards against Sam Houston State. That's just not good. They almost got outran on much fewer carries, a handful of fewer carries by, this FCS opponent. So obviously a pretty shaky start for A&M. A lot of teams are really flat in this game or in this opening weekend, though. Michigan, great against Utah or Colorado State rather, 51-7. McNamara did not look good, though. He made a lot of. He was very inconsistent with his accuracy. He made some errors. That he threw a bad pick in the first half. He was overturned, but he still threw it right to the defender. Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, they got things going. Roman Wilson made a nice play. The biggest thing, though, was the pass rush for Michigan. They had a handful of different guys contribute in the route to 7 sacks, I believe, in this ball game. We'll pull up the number right here. Yeah, 7 sacks for Michigan. This was a phenomenal effort from their defense. A lot of different guys stepped up. Jalen Harrell, Rod Moore, Mozzie Smith. Some of the guys kind of, highlighted in the offseason. Michael Barnett is one of them. We'll see what happens for Michigan as well. It's a few weeks before they play a tough opponent, but this is an easy win here covered in that one. Balanced effort for Oklahoma in the route of UTEP in Brent Venables' debut. USC same, 66 points. The defense did not look good early. They did have 3 pick sixes, really changed the tone, but Rice had 2 long drives in the first half. One of them ended in a pick six, and then I think they had another one as well that ended up getting a touchdown. So Rice offense, they eventually stalled out, and USC ran up the scoreboard. And we'll see what they do against Stanford. The defense might struggle here as they go on the road. NC State, my playoff prediction, is not looking great because you knew this was going to be a tough game here against ECU. I thought their defense was great. Offense did not do them any favors. They got shut out in the second half. They had a touchdown drive there in that first quarter. After that, they really settled in, and the points were kind of given to them by just the poor offense. Devin Leary was just not confident. He made some great throws on third down. For the most part, he was inaccurate. Made a bad pick late in the game. And when they missed that extra point, ECU, to tie things up, I said, for ECU, this is probably the best case scenario because NC State, they're not going to be aggressive now, and they've not been good at moving the ball at all. So I was like, this is pretty good for them. And what do you know? They get the ball back and make things happen, and they just were unable to hit the game-winning field goal. But I thought the defense was great for them. Limited ECU to 116 yards. Holton Allairs, look at that completion percentage, 25-41, 6.5 average. Secondary was phenomenal. First drive, I believe it was, Tyler Baker-Williams had a great pick, and the nickel, he's really shining out there for them. I thought this was a great effort from their defense. I thought they were on the field a good bit. Look at here, 27 plus 41. They're on the field for over, 68 plays. So that's obviously not great for this offense. It's not a good look because they just could not really move the chains. They could not do anything at the goal line either. They got stopped twice in a row there in that second half in the red zone. Pretty poor effort. These guys ran hard. Jordan Houston, Demi Sumo, these guys were really getting after it, trying to cover up how poor Devin Leary really was. I expect him to bounce back because that was just a pathetic effort, and I think he'll be much better next time out. 21-20, surviving advance there for NC State. See what they can do the rest of the year. Miami ran it up on Bethune-Cookman 70-13, 38-0 for Wisconsin. Easy win. Braylon Allen went for almost 150. Kentucky, 37-13. Will Levis was not all that great. Missed a lot of throws. Threw a red zone pick. Got sacked 4 times. That's not great. They play Florida here on the road now. Next Saturday, Tavion Robinson, he had a phenomenal effort in his debut for them, the Virginia Tech transfer. Ole Miss only 28 against Troy. Really good defense, though, for Troy. I don't think they did much through the air, but Zach Evans had 130. I picked UTSA to beat Houston, and they really had it there for a second. This was a great game, though. Really came down to the wire. Houston, they scored the 2-point conversion to the new overtime rules. Frank Harrison, this passing attack. I expected them to have pretty good success against this secondary, and they did. 337 through the air, 3 touchdowns. Harris also had 63 yards rushing. They really couldn't run the ball that well. Houston, then its defensive line. One of the reasons I picked UTSA was because of the big, nasty offensive line they have against a really good Houston defensive line, but I like them to, protect well against the pass, and or in terms of pass protection, rather. I didn't think that running the ball would be all that easy. And, Houston, 3 sacks, 6 tackles for loss. They really played hard, and both sides of the ball in the trenches had great success there. So it was a fun little matchup to watch all night long, was that O-line for UTSA versus the Houston D-line. Tank Dell, 5 catches, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns. Solid little stat line. We expected him to get a lot more work, kind of like Zakarian Franklin. He ended up with 10 grabs for 100 yards, but these guys were expected to come out here and put up, much better statistics than that. Dell just was not involved in the offense enough. They get away here with winning this game. The passing attack was kind of a struggle for them throughout the day. Running the ball, I thought they had some respectable balance. But, 206 yards for this passing attack, kind of a disappointing effort because they got a lot of guys coming back. And Matthew Golden, a 4-star freshman that came in, he made a big play with a 37-yard grab. And then Joseph Manick Jr., or IV, he had a great grab for a touchdown there late in that game. I believe it was in overtime, actually. I don't know. It was sometime in the game. He had a great one-handed grab, phenomenal concentration there. Both teams, though, plenty of good, plenty of bad as well. Tank Dell, one of the nation's best receivers, needs to be involved a lot more, though, down the stretch. South Florida gets crushed by BYU. They're like 12-point dogs in this one for some reason, and they lost 50-21. Iowa, they score 2 safeties en route to a 7-3 win over South Dakota State. Very strange. Spencer Petros was absolutely terrible. Iowa's offense, they need to change the scheme. I've been saying this for a while. This defense was great. How many yards did they even give up in this game? Probably not many. Maryland, they routed Buffalo. Rutgers, the Scarlet Knights, I picked them to cover in this game, and I'm so happy they won. Good for them. Fudgerkovich, Zay Flowers, they looked pretty good, but overall, this Rutgers front seven was great. And I was very concerned about the front seven coming into the year because they replaced so many proven commodities, and they kind of underperformed last year. I expected them to really take that next jump, and they didn't with all their returning experience. They were very disappointing. And right here you can see, Pat Garwo, only 25 yards on 14 carries. Look at that, 28 for 29. They really got after it. Rutgers, this was a great effort for Greg Schiano's team. How many sacks do they have? We'll see here, 4 sacks, 2 picks by Robert Longerbeam, one of them. Christian Braswell had a great pick there late in the game. This was just a great effort from Rutgers, especially with a backup quarterback, too. Noah Verdal before the game was ruled out. And then, the backup here, Evan Simon. Actually, he was given the start, I believe, but Gavin Wimsott, he's the one who closed out the game for them. Kyle Monahagi, 19 carries, 78 yards. Look at that, 212, 3 touchdowns. They're really running the ball well with authority. It's something I really want to see this year from Rutgers is to run the ball better. So that's a great win for Greg Schiano and this ball club. Very happy for them. Back to the San Diego State game real quick. How many yards do they allow? Yes, I mean, less than 100 in both categories. They just completely blanked with these guys. 120 yards, 166 for Iowa. Yeah, so, I mean, very poor effort, really, on both sides for offense. You expected the defense to kind of blow these guys out, and they did. I mean, their defense is going to put up historic numbers this year, I think. It's going to be crazy. 63-61, UNC App State, craziest game on the day. Drake May, I expected this guy. I expected Jacoby Criswell to actually be the starter, but I was excited for May when he got the job as well because I felt like both these guys were perfect fits. May, this guy is a cool customer, man. 24-35, 352, 4 touchdowns. They did have a fumble late in the game, and he was unable to really put it away, which gave them App State a chance, but he had 76 touchdown running. Another balanced effort from this offense, which is great, but the defense got throttled. But as much, 40 points in the fourth quarter, that's unheard of for a team to score. But this defense for UNC is a big reason why they won the game. They were down 21-7 early, and they really battled back. They settled down in the second quarter, and then in the third, they shut them out completely. But for some reason, that didn't carry over to the final frame. They gave up 40 points, 6 total touchdowns, turned 88 yards to App State. Cam Peoples had a late rushing touchdown of 38 yards to help tie things up. And then you see in the bottom right corner there, I mean, it's ridiculous. 31 seconds to go. The 2-point conversion should have ended the game. They ended up getting a touchdown on the kick return, and App State went right back downfield and had another chance to send it to overtime. Just a wild game. This is an absurd one. I picked the UNC 23-20, and both those teams had, 3 times those points. UNC defense is going to be in for a long year, in terms of what they were able to do against the pass. Absolutely nothing. They just, in the first quarter, they gave up, in the first 16 minutes, they gave up 21 points. They couldn't cover anybody on the outside. They weren't that great. One of the tight ends that scored was running free. It was just an absurd effort. Josh Downs was out of this game, too, so I think it's really encouraging. We can score 63 points with Josh Downs, one of the nation's best receivers, on the sideline. UNC, though, they kind of struggled early on offense because the App State defense was really getting after it. Nick Hampton, you see right there, 2.5 sacks. He was one of them. He was a tone setter. He's their best player on defense. He got hurt at one point. I believe he came back. But, I think that things kind of changed when he went out of that game. Just an absurd game overall. 40 points in the fourth quarter. 62 total points. The over-under for this game was a lot less than that. So to see that many points in one frame, that's absurd. App State plays Texas A&M next. UNC, I'm not sure, but it's going to be a big struggle. It's going to be a fun team to watch, though, because this offense, they're going to compete with anybody, especially with Amari Hampton, his emergence. UCLA, they rout Bowling Green and a very empty crowd at the Rose Bowl. Arizona, I'm very happy to see Jed Fish get things done, 38-20. I'm not shocked to see San Diego State lose this game one bit because Jacob Cowling and Jaden DeLore coming over, mixed with a lot of young guys on this roster. They're very excited. This was the first team I broke down in the offseason, and I picked them, only won about 4 games, but I was like, this team can really do a lot, and they can really shock some people this offseason. 299 yards, 4 touchdowns. 3 of those went to Cowling, the UTEP transfer. Both those guys transfer in after pretty successful seasons last year. 152 through the air, and look at this. I mean, 7 grabs, 62 yards. This San Diego State offense. I didn't watch much of this game. I was excited for Braxton Burmeister. I thought he was going to be a big addition for them, and he struggled 5 of 10, 51 yards. They didn't really have a commitment to the passing game. And he also ran a lot, 10 for 20. There was no daylight one bit. I didn't watch the game. I'll have to watch the tape. But if I had to guess, it's more because of this scheme limiting them than it was the Arizona defense. They gave up like 40 points per game last year, and they're still kind of trying to come into their own. See Jalen Harris right there having a big effort. So I'm not sure. I'll have to watch the tape on this one, but obviously this is just pathetic. 7 grabs, 62 yards. Jesse Matthews, only 18. I mean, they got to get him involved more. And Burmeister took a lot of hits. He got benched sometime in that second half for Will Haskell. They're going to go back to square one. The last 3 games, though, dating back to last year for the San Diego State defense, has just been, not good. And I think that's a big part of that is to do with the offensive scheme, being pretty one-dimensional, doing nothing through the air. Nebraska, they were tied, I believe, 10-10 with North Dakota. They get things done 38-17. Anthony Grant, almost 200 yards, had a big touchdown that kind of started to turn things around. I mean, that's just, I don't know. Nebraska, something else. They played Georgia Southern and then Oklahoma after that. Coastal Carolina Army, that was a fun game to watch. Terrell Robinson ripped off a big run. The Army offense, they did their thing, 28 points. But the thing about Army is you got to score every single possession because their defense, especially when they play Coastal Carolina, a team like that, they're not used to these offensive schemes. They don't practice against it, and it's just going to be a field day. Reese White had a big day. Grayson McCall did his thing as a dual threat guy. That's just the thing with those type of teams, though, that play Army. Louisville, Syracuse, 31-7, shocking. I picked Syracuse to win this game. Sean Tucker was crazy. Him and Garrett Schrader. These guys are just so fun to watch because Schrader is a dual threat guy. They really got to go through the air. 237 is impressive. This defense led by 3 veteran linebackers. Not even veterans, though. They're still young. Michael Jones, only a junior. 152, 2 picks for Cunningham. Did nothing on the ground. Tucker, there you go, 98 for a touchdown. Also led the team with 85 yards on a score through the air. I'm going to be a big fan of this team this year. I only picked them to win about 3 games because the schedule was so tough, and I just didn't really have the guts to pick them any. But I'm going to be rooting for them every single game this year. You see Michael Jones there had a big game. Garrett Williams, one of the nation's top corners, was not tested one bit. Stephon Thompson, another one of those guys. So 31-7 is a very shocking score. Expected this one to be a close competition. This explosive offense, though, of Louisville did nothing. Tyler Hudson, had a good game, 8 grabs, 102. Run game was not really there. A chunk of Tyon Evans' production came off of one run. So very disappointing effort from Louisville there. Boise State as well. I think Bachmeier had 3 straight turnovers. Chance Nolan, very excited for his progression this season. We'll see what happens there. But, they didn't really run the ball all that well. They really scored points off of turnovers here. And, Taylor Green, he came into the game late after Bachmeier. There you go, 4 of 8 for 2 picks. That's not good. 102 and 2 touchdowns, 155 through the air. Pretty efficient as well. I mean, in the second half, they're starting to get things going a little bit. He really sparked their offense. He's probably going to be the quarterback moving forward, even though Bachmeier's been really good in his first 2 years. As you can see, though, still, they cannot run the ball one bit. Taylor Green at quarterback. He's got some speed, so obviously that really changes the numbers, but they can't run the ball one bit. And that's been a big problem for George Haloney, the lead running back, 13 carries, 9 yards. It's just pathetic effort. Chance Nolan, 251, 2 touchdowns. And there you go. They didn't really run the ball that well either. They got a lot of guys involved, though. Deshaun Fenwick, the big back. Demi Martinez, Trey Lowe. They got a nice trio there at running back. Luke Musgrove stepping up, trying to, Anthony Gold as well, trying to emerge as the number 1 pass catcher. I picked Oregon State to win that game. Very impressive effort, though, to force as many turnovers as they did. And then to cap things off, Florida State beats LSU in a Sunday night thriller. These Sunday night games with Florida State never seem to disappoint one bit. Crazy fourth quarter. Another muff punt from LSU. We'll get to the poor special teams in a minute. And then they drive right downfield, though, 99 yards after they probably should have let Florida State score to give them a shot. They end up having a fumble recovered from Treshaun Ward and Jordan Travis. They went with a toss play. It didn't work. I mean, just pretty crazy end to the game. Could have expected that, seeing that happening, with a blocked kick. I kind of figured that would happen. I don't know how. Just college football never disappoints, and you can kind of anticipate what would happen. For the most part, though, LSU offense was just flat out awful. Mike Denbrock and these guys had no identity. Jaden Daniels' legs was the only offense they had. And, he ran it up right here for 209 yards total through the air. A lot of that came at the end. But for the most part, this was embarrassing. There was no commitment one bit to get the ball to Kayshon Boutte. I mean, halfway through the third quarter, he only had 3 targets for no catches. There's just no commitment to get him the ball, no running game. Coming into this game, I did say that both teams, their best unit was their defensive lines. Florida State's, I thought, was much better than LSU's. Of course, Mason Smith and Ali Gay went down, one with targeting and the other one with a freak injury early in the first half. But, see right here, 114 for Daniels. The team had 139 total. There was no commitment to run the ball, but they couldn't. So I can't really blame them for that. This was a big problem last year, about 114 yards per game on the ground last fall. And the offensive line was just flat out terrible. Jared Verse was phenomenal, made plays, blocked a kick, had numerous sacks. We'll get the total down here, but he was just a presence off the edge all game, making plays. And the Florida State running game, it was not great like I thought it would. I thought they would attack the edges a little bit more. I thought they'd get Treshaun Ward and Jordan Travis on the edge, and they didn't look to do that. It was kind of strange, but Florida State was, their offensive line kind of struggled on the interior as well. But LSU didn't really seem to have much of a pass rushing. I guess the defensive numbers are not posted yet, but LSU, they didn't really have a great pass rush. Jordan Travis made great plays. One thing I noticed about him over the years is he keeps his eyes downfield when he's outside of the pocket and looking to make plays on the run. He made impressive plays time after time in this contest, turned 60 yards through the air, 31 rushing, an 8-yard average almost. Good win for Florida State. They probably should have won this one by a little bit more. Their offense wasn't exactly, upended, but I do think that they certainly, in multiple areas, were much better than LSU. It would have been pretty disappointing to see him lose this game. And Ontario Wilson, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns, really stepped up, dished out the ball quite a bit. It's just a strange game for LSU because the offense, they didn't even have a dimension really. Jaden Daniels' legs, that was it. And some special teams, 2 block kicks, the one right there at the end to seal the deal. The game-tying extra point, 2 muffed punts. They shanked a punt earlier in the game. I mean, it was just flat-out horrible. If they didn't make half of those mistakes, they probably would have won this game. Overall, very interesting game. I think both teams, there was a lot you learned here about them. Florida State, I do think their defense is legit, but their secondary played very well. But at the same time, I don't really understand the game plan here from LSU's offense. The play calling was not great. I think that LSU moving forward, though, this is a big win for them because they've been on the wrong side of these games for the last couple of years many times now. LSU moving forward, you're going to have to get more out of your offense. Try to find an identity. They didn't have one bit tonight. More commitment to your playmakers. 2 grabs, 20 yards for one of the nation's top receivers. Obviously can't do that, and hopefully Ali Gay, he was our objective for targeting. But Mason Smith, hopefully we hear something nice regarding him and his future. Wish the best for him because he was going to be a breakout star for them. But, yeah, both defensive lines, they did everything in this game for each other. Florida State just made more plays on offense, capitalized off more mistakes than the other team made. LSU, 99-yard drive there at the end, though, by Daniels and this team. It was great to see them come together and not give up, especially, Malik Neighbors, who he had a couple grabs on that drive, that final drive, to get things started after the muffed punt, his second of the night. So it was nice to see this team continue to battle and stay in there. It's going to be a tough loss. Big win for Florida State. We'll see what happens moving forward. I do think both these teams have plenty to work on, especially, getting beefier in the trenches because both O-lines are pretty poor, especially LSU's. It was awful. Jared Verso, he's going to be a star, replacing Jermaine Johnson, who was a first-team All-American last year. He had, I think it was 2.5 sacks, but overall he was MVP of this game for the defense. Travis did his thing on offense. Fun game all around. These Sunday games never seem to disappoint. Hopefully we have another one on the docket next year. It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.